We're on part 15 of the Jeet Kune series, page number 14. Organized the spirit. In a long history of martial arts, the instinct to follow and imitate seems to be inherent in most martial artists, instructors, and students alike. This is partly due to human tendency and partly because of the steep traditions behind multiple patterns of styles. Consequently, to find a refreshing, original master teacher is a rarity. The need for a pointer of the way echoes. Reflection. Each man belongs to a style which claims to possess truth to the exclusion of all other styles. These styles become institutes with their explanations of the way, dissecting and isolating the harmony of firmness and gentleness, establishing rhythmic forms as the particular state of their techniques. Reflection. Instead of facing combat in its suchness, then most systems of martial art accumulate a fancy mess that distorts and cramps their practitioners and distracts them from the actual reality of combat, which is simple and direct. Instead of going immediately to the heart of things, flowery forms, organized despair, and artificial techniques are ritualistically practiced to stimulate actual combat. Thus, instead of being in combat, these practitioners are doing something about combat. Reflection.
I have a reflection.
Go ahead.
When it talks about a fancy mess, it caught my ear because I see martial arts or certain martial art schools or traditions, and it's like, well, what's the point? Are you doing this to show off, or are you doing it to address, are you doing it to, address a situation in combat? Like, what truly works can be something really simple and actually very ugly, versus something that looks very great but is ineffective.
Yeah, it gets me to think about, the gymnastics or the Olympics just passed. Like the fancy mess I might liken to, like what the gymnasts might do. Like, it's not necessarily like a fancy mess, but it's just, it doesn't really, they're not claiming combat, but what they're doing is not combat. It's something that's showy, flashy, but then combat is more like a police officer that sees somebody with a gun or a knife, and then he gets out his gun and shoots and kills the person. It's just something that's really direct and immediate, and that's, Bruce is all about being simple and direct, but it's just interesting that none of the weapons that he used, none of his movies you really see him picking up a knife or a gun. Sometimes the people use that against him, like swords are coming at him, but he'll usually use like a nunchuck or like a stick. But things that work when it comes to real combat is just direct. So just think about, like, if you're in a burning building, you want to immediately get out there as quick as possible. You don't want to, start running in different directions that have, not getting out the door. You just want to get out quick. So if your life is in danger, you want to take care of the situation as soon as possible. But I think, looking at it from my experiences in training and seeing how things have evolved in the martial arts and in technology, I think as soon as the firearms were developed and mass distributed, a lot of the unarmed combative techniques have become less relevant in modern society. So I think a lot of these systems have either turned into more of a game or like a fancy show, like what Bruce is talking about. or like maybe toward like a way towards spirituality, or a dance, like a self-expressiveness, like as an, like an artist. Like I think sometimes people use martial arts as almost like a live painting. Like instead of like sitting down and painting, they'll they'll move around for an hour and do whatever body movement they want to do, and then they'll call it the martial art, because their mentality is kind of, they're less concerned about the fighting and more about the self-expressiveness, or the heading towards enlightenment. I mean, obviously I could see the truth of Bruce is what he's talking about, but I could also understand others who might practice martial arts for other reasons that are not just about combativeness. I could understand the other part too, but I think it's just important that like yourself, what you're doing and the purpose behind it, and like not to get mistakenly believe that like certain techniques will save your life when in actuality it's not going to. It's almost like owning a gun, but then you never tested it, and then you didn't know that there's a malfunction in the gun and something's wrong with it, that if you tried to use it during life, a dangerous situation, it just wouldn't even work because there's a malfunction. That's a problem. But if you own a gun and you know that it doesn't work, then that's another thing. Or you own a gun and you know that it's not going to be effective in certain situations, like it's a BB gun or a pellet gun, then you know. But if you own a gun, you know that it's lethal, and you know that it's dangerous, then you'll lock it up in a safe and you'll be careful with it. So my thing is knowing what you're doing. So whatever you're practicing, for whatever purpose, if it's for artistic expressiveness, if it's for combat, if it's for spiritual enlightenment, know what you're practicing and know what it's for, and don't falsely believe that something is going to be protecting you when it's not. Just like the other day, this guy came to me for some lessons, and then this is his first day, and he's like, oh, I want to learn this, I want to learn that, can you show me how to disarm somebody if they have a knife or a gun? And I'm like, I'm not going to show you that, because I'm not going to show you what doesn't work. I told him, look, if you want to have any chance with somebody that has a knife, then you either better be carrying a gun, or you better be carrying a knife yourself. I said, I'm not going to show you, how to disarm somebody with a knife, because that stuff doesn't work. Like, I'm just honest about it, from my experiences. Like, 'cause the thing is, like, people, they can't even defend themselves when it's unarmed combat. They're having a tough time. Fist fight, they're having a really tough time. And then now, you're giving the guy a knife that would already beat you up without a knife, and then you're trying to disarm him. I mean, you're just gonna get killed out there, So I don't show people stuff that doesn't work, So I think that's what Bruce is pointed towards. Like, if you really want to learn martial arts for self-defense, then you gotta stay away from all that fancy stuff. But if you don't care about being proficient in combat, then it's almost like you could practice whatever you want. You could practice kickboxing, boxing, Zumba, go to a dance class, go to Pilates, go to the gym, go run outside, do a triathlon, do a marathon. It doesn't matter. You can just do whatever you want. Break dance. But if you want to defend yourself, and you're saying, if somebody's threatening my life, what do I do? Then you need to be smart about how you approach it. So, like, say you're in here for like weight loss, and I said, okay, Brandon, go ahead and hit that punching bag for an hour straight. As long as you sweat, then you should probably fulfill your goal. But it doesn't mean that that's the same as sparring and keeping your hands up and knowing how to dodge and duck and respond and react to certain situations when people are trying to endanger you. It's a different type of training, and I think not a lot of people have the understanding of real combat in order to teach it. some people have an understanding of sport combat, and they teach that. But I think very few people have an understanding of real combat and how to teach that. Because it could be something very simple, you know. You can literally bite them or gouge their eye and then they'll get off you. But a lot of these sport fighters well, you can't do that because it's not, you know, it's not allowed. Well, then you're stepping away from the realm of real fighting, you know, because you're imposing rules upon what can and cannot be done during a certain deadly situation. Alright, next part. Worse still, super mental power and spiritual this and spiritual that are desperately incorporated until these practitioners drift further and further into mystery and abstraction. All such things are futile attempts to arrest and fix the ever-changing movements in combat and to dissect and analyze them like a corpse. Reflection. When you get down to it, real combat is not fixed and is very much alive. The fancy mess, a form of paralysis, it solidifies and conditions that what was once fluid. And when you look at it realistically, it is nothing but a blind devotion to the systematic uselessness of practicing routines or stunts that lead nowhere. Reflection. Go ahead.
This part that you're reading, just this is totally overall from what I'm hearing is kind of Bruce's way of saying don't hold on to traditions or something that's not relevant. You know, blindly doing something just out of habit, like break the habit. You know, a lot of stuff. Not saying that things can't work, but you're just becoming so spiritually dead to the now that whatever that you've been practicing, you're just doing it kind of like rote learning. Or, yeah, rote learning. You don't understand. You remember, but you don't understand how, you know, whatever that you practice or whatever tradition you learn works. It's like speaking a language, but you don't know the words. So you're just saying whatever, but you're not making any sense. It's the same thing, I guess, combat. Like, you're doing stuff that could potentially work, but it's not relevant. You don't know how to use it.
I clearly, and I see Bruce's side, and through time, I start to understand the other side as well. I mean, understand that in my eyes, you know, Bruce never really dealt with much firearms, and back then, there wasn't as advanced firearms as they have today. You know, I think they're still having revolvers back then. You don't really find firearms that often, but now they got like semi-automatics, they got Glocks, and so many people have guns out there. Even like old ladies have guns, and just everybody, like a lot of people have guns. And people are even using AR-15s and stuff like that. And when you look at the way today is compared to how it was back 50 years ago when he was living, it's just a different world that we live in. You know, and today, I could almost say that if you don't deal with guns, then almost all unarmed combative training ends up becoming like what Bruce is talking about. Like, it's no longer alive. You know, it's just, it could, in a way, unarmed combat could be seen as a devotion to systematic uselessness of practicing routines or stunts that lead nowhere. Because, I mean, just think about training in unarmed combat for 20 years and And then you go out there and somebody just pulls out a gun at you and kills you. And he didn't train at all. All he did was just pull that trigger. You know, but when you look at it from another perspective, it's like that blind devotion to the systematic uselessness of practicing routines or stunts that lead nowhere. Like a routine could be like the fitness program that we just worked on, you know, for about an hour today. That's kind of like a routine. Another routine is like what the gymnasts do and the mats and the rings and all that. That's a routine. It's like an exercise routine that they do. Stunts are like, once again, like what gymnasts do or stunt doubles. They do a lot of flips and things like that. You know, just... Now, if you look at routine and you look at stunts, they are like, in a way, like exercise programs. You know, so if you keep practicing exercise over and over again, it's not necessarily useless because it's benefiting your health, right? And it could be a way of meditation. So that blind devotion to systematic routine could be similar to, like, say, a boxer that just goes into the gym, hits the heavy bag for 2 hours every single day for like 10 years. It's like a blind devotion to just doing one thing over and over and over again for a very long time. And that's almost like what Kung Fu is. It's like discipline, you know. So, of course I understand Bruce's statement, but I still understand that this was written like over 40 years ago. And he lived in a different time that we live in right now. And I could almost categorize even Bruce's expression to be outdated compared to the weapons that are available in modern times. So almost in a way, to me, almost all unarmed combat, no matter how effective it is, it ends up becoming part of the tradition as well. Because it's just that so many people, at least in Chicago and America, have access to firearms. If we lived in Japan, where guns are banned for like the entire country, and you will never find guns around really, then I think it'd be a different reality than what we have right here. But according to the reality of what I see right now, in my surroundings, in my environment, I think all these unarmed combative training could be seen as traditional. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't train in it or that it's useless, because that's like saying you going out to run outside in the morning is every single morning is useless, or you strength training is useless, you stretching is useless, you painting is useless, you dancing is useless. So I think it's up to us to decide what is useless to us and what is not. If there's something that we're doing that we see a benefit in, then that's going to motivate us to continue doing it. Just hitting a punching bag, for example, might not be dealing with firearms, but it could be your way of relieving stress and making you feel better inside. So it goes beyond just applying it when your life is in danger, but almost as used as a way of like releasing anger, frustrations, so that you don't take it on into like a human being. But it's a way of like getting out energy that's bottled up, that needs to be expressed. Next, when real feeling occurs, such as anger or fear, can the stylist express himself with the classical method, or is he merely listening to his own screams and yells? Is he a living, expressive human being, or merely a patternized mechanical robot? Is he an entity capable of flowing with external circumstances, or is he resisting with his set of chosen patterns? Is his chosen pattern forming a screen between him and the opponent and preventing a total and fresh relationship? Reflection.
I have a reflection.
Go ahead.
So, I see combat in the context of my life as part of a relationship. And my perception is an important part of whether I see a threat. If I have a set of skills that I look to, primarily I see Kung Fu and the combat skills as the ones that I should use to address the situation, then that relationship, which could be with a complete stranger, has been altered. And as skilled as I might be in creating or responding to a volatile situation, we live in a world where I wouldn't be able to go back to that place again. And if it happened here, I would not be able to come back because people have firearms. And if I were to embarrass someone or hurt someone, they would either come back immediately with friends, or they would simply go to their car and pick up a firearm, or I would know that next time I saw them they were carrying. So the difficult part is, how do I both use the discipline of Kung Fu and the other tools that I have? My primary goal is to be kind to people. And the second part is, if I start getting into altercations with people, and I'm relying on hand-to-hand combat, I may be looking at someone who has a friend or who themselves is carrying a weapon. So I have to be very, very careful how I approach other people. I better not act like I'm all that. I better seek the kind solution in almost all situations, unless I'm actually thrown into a situation that's so unusual, and then I simply have to respond to save my life.
You know, it gets me to think about, I've been hearing stories over and over again where a girl breaks up with her boyfriend, he ends up killing her, like choking her, stabbing her, shooting her. It gets me to think about stuff like that where it's a lot of times it's not even about how great you are in fighting, but it's like, do you have control of your emotions and your mind? And if somebody doesn't, and they have no control of their anger, that's a very dangerous person. And people that train in martial arts are supposed to have complete control, and they're not supposed to be dangerous where they're just hurting people because they get emotional or they get angry. They are people that are in tune with themselves, and it's like even in dangerous situations they're still calm. But when you got somebody who's driving a car and then he gets upset at you and he's ready to kill you, those are the types of things that's a threat in this type of world that we live in. When you got like a person who's dating a woman and he gets heartbroken and now he wants to kill the whole world, these are the types of people that are a big threat. And when it comes to people like this, and you're a martial artist, it's up to you to handle the situation in as much calmness and peacefulness as you can, so then this other person does not lose it. You know, because if he loses it because of you, then that could cost the lives of so many people around that person because of your actions. You know, so say you're a martial artist and you're driving a car and somebody cut you off or you cut him off, and he gets really upset and he's ready to kill you, and then you escalate the situation by getting upset as well, and then now he gets so upset that he ends up killing you, your entire family, and then everybody else in the whole area. Cops come, he kills the cops, all because he's so upset over what? Because you cut him off, and you had the ability to respond to that situation how you deemed fit. If you just say, you know what, I'm sorry, sorry about that, and you take your ego out of it, maybe the whole situation wouldn't have occurred. But I think there's a lot of people out there that have nothing to lose, where they have no purpose in life, no meaning in life, and they're going around looking for situations to activate this anger energy that they have and then express destruction to this world. And as martial artists, we need to contribute more calmness to people rather than contributing to that anger. Because if we respond to a certain situation in calmness, then we could almost educate the people out there to almost do the same. I mean, Bruce Lee, emphasized this in his movie, The End of the Dragon, that bully was going around the ferry boat, pushing people around, want to start a fight, and then Bruce Lee just kind of, he didn't contribute to that, but he just kind of just said the art of fighting without fighting, put him in a boat, and the guy went over there, But it was just an example of handling a situation differently than coming right back with anger and aggression just because somebody else is, coming at you with it, at the same time. So I think a great kung fu artist or martial artist, he's the type of person where he's justified in killing the offender because he's truly in threat. Like, the gun's pointed at him, the knife is out. The martial artist could literally kill the person if he wanted to, but then at the same time he finds a way to handle the situation without over-escalating it, and he handles it with more, just more more tactical, a little bit more intelligent, a little more peaceful. So imagine a police officer, a guy pulls out a knife on him. The police officer is justified in shooting and killing the person. Or the police officer could be like, pulls out his gun, tells the person to drop the knife, person's still not dropping it, tells the person again, and then gives the person a chance. Talks to the person. Finally, the person drops the knife. Police officer goes in there, handcuffs him, puts him, put him in jail. So he essentially could have killed the person, but he decided not to. He found another way to handle the situation without killing him. And I think for us, when you train, you're going to be put in those types of situations. Even if it's in sparring, I mean, you could demolish the person if you want, but you choose not to because you want to help this person get better in their techniques, and you're not there to show off or to hurt somebody. But you're there to, essentially, I think the high-level martial artists are the individuals that are able to control their emotions, their techniques, just they're at a very high level of control in what they do. But the very dangerous person is a person that has control over nothing. Like, you give a gun to somebody who's mentally unstable, then there's, that's a very dangerous situation there. That's why when they do gun permits, they're always checking people's mental health. But even people that are so-called mentally healthy, you see that they could flip just like that. So this is a situation where we live in a world where so many people have access to dangerous weapons. So it requires more mental health, not just physical health, but mental health as well. So a martial artist is supposed to be physically healthy. He's supposed to be mentally healthy. And he's supposed to be spiritually towards the path of enlightenment. And then that will demonstrate like greater responsibility in the techniques that he has to train and practice in. So that's what it gets me to think about, real life is not like the video games where you shoot somebody to get revived and everything's okay. Like you shoot somebody, kill somebody, if you're not justified in doing so, you could go to jail for the rest of your life. And you affect so many different people. The person that you killed, You're affecting all his family members, his wife, his children, his friends, and you brought it up. You brought it up, just right now. Retaliation. You might think that you won today because you survived a certain situation, but you got to remember about retaliation and how it is out there in the streets, where they could have their family member coming after you, and next thing you know, you got 10 dead bodies over something stupid, because somebody got angry. But that's the good meditation.